For nearly 2 decades, one man made the most breathtaking national park in the world his home. He climbed sheer granite cliffs, evaded park rangers, and lived entirely by his own rules. This man was Charles Victor Tucker III, better known as Chongo Chuck. Chongo wasn't your typical climber. He wasn't just obsessed with reaching the top of Yosemite's towering cliffs. He was obsessed with living freely, rejecting society's expectations of success, money, and stability. Despite his deep intelligence, he chose to be homeless, seeing no shame in it. He glorified it. For nearly 20 years, he lived off the land in Yosemite National Park, evading the authorities who wanted him out. He became a legend among climbers, a mentor to some of the world's best, and an underground philosopher who believed modern life was a trap. But eventually, the rangers caught up with him, and he was forced to leave his paradise behind. This is the story of Chongo Chuck, the man, the myth, and the mind behind Yosemite's most fascinating outlaw. When it comes to pushing limits in business or creative work, sometimes you need a little extra help. Whether you're launching a new project, starting a business, or just need some creative work done, finding skilled professionals can be expensive and time-consuming. Hiring agencies or in-house talent costs a fortune, and sorting through unqualified freelancers can be a nightmare. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Fiverr. Fiverr connects you with thousands of talented freelancers who can handle just about anything: graphic design, video editing, programming, marketing, writing, and more. No need to hire an expensive agency or sift through unreliable options. With Fiverr, you can find professionals with verified reviews, fixed prices, and turnaround times that fit your schedule. Whether you need a logo, website, voiceover, or business consultation, there's someone on Fiverr who can get it done quickly and affordably. So scroll down, click the link below, and check out Fiverr for yourself. Chongo was born in California during the 1950s. Little is known about his early years, but it's clear he wasn't cut out for a conventional life. Unlike most people who chase careers, stability, and financial success, he was drawn to something else: absolute freedom. Chongo's journey into climbing began in his teenage years, teaching himself the sport in California. He was born in an American military base in Japan 1951. He claimed to remember the fear of his birth. His father, a civil engineer, moved the family frequently, and Chongo, the oldest of 7 siblings, later graduated high school in Los Angeles. He briefly studied mathematics at the University of Arizona, but eventually chose a different path. Throughout his life, he supported himself in various ways. He worked as a computer programmer, writer, and journalist. He also repaired climbing shoes and even designed and sewed his own clothing, developing a small business in Yosemite. However, his success attracted the attention of park rangers, who in 1995 charged him with running an illegal textile business from his tent in Hidden Valley Campground. In addition to his various skills, he was fluent in Spanish, having spent 8 years living in Mexico. This was the golden age of climbing, a time when rebels and misfits flocked to Yosemite to push the limits of human endurance. But while most climbers came and went, Chongo stayed. His love for Yosemite went beyond climbing. It became his home. He didn't just visit the park, he lived in it. He built a lifestyle around climbing, teaching, and surviving off the land. He wasn't interested in competitions or records. He was interested in something much deeper, a way of life that rejected money, materialism, and the structure of modern civilization. For nearly 20 years, Chongo made Yosemite his home, despite strict regulations banning long-term camping in the park. To avoid being caught by rangers, he developed an almost mythical ability to disappear. He knew the park's secret caves, hidden ledges, and isolated spots better than anyone. During the day, he would blend in with climbers, offering advice, fixing gear, or practicing slacklining. At night, he would vanish into the wilderness, setting up camp far from any official sites. Unlike tourists who needed supplies from stores, Chongo relied on the generosity of the climbing community. In exchange for food and gear, he would fix ropes, resole climbing shoes, and teach beginners the techniques of big wall climbing. Chongo didn't see himself as homeless, he saw himself as houseless. To him, the whole earth was his home, and Yosemite was simply the most beautiful part of it. Park rangers didn't take kindly to people living in Yosemite. Rules were strict. Visitors could only stay for a maximum of 14 days. Chongo, however, ignored the rules entirely. He slept in hidden caves and behind massive boulders, using the natural landscape as a shelter. He moved campsites constantly, never staying in one place long enough to be discovered. He learned the rangers' patrol schedule, avoiding detection like a ghost. He left no traces of staying back in Yosemite. He always had his backpacks on him. At one point, the rangers put up wanted posters with his face on them, but still, he remained one step ahead. Chongo was a philosopher. He believed modern society was broken, designed to trap people in endless work, debt, and responsibilities that robbed them of true freedom. He rejected the idea that happiness came from money, success, or possessions. He believed in living simply. If you don't own much, you don't have much to lose. He rejected money as a necessity, surviving without a job or bank account. He saw climbing as a spiritual practice, a way to connect with the world without being controlled by it. His ideas weren't just abstract thoughts, he lived them. He proved it was possible to survive outside the system. He lived for nearly 20 years without rent, bills, or income. Chongo wasn't just a man in the background of Yosemite's climbing scene. Many of the world's greatest climbers learned from him. More than just an experienced climber, he had a unique ability to explain and pass down knowledge in a way that transformed his students' understanding of the sport. One of his biggest contributions was slacklining, the act of balancing on a webbing stretched between 2 points. Today, slacklining is recognized as a sport, but Chongo was one of its early pioneers, showing climbers how to use it for balance training, mental focus, and body control. He didn't just see slacklining as a physical activity, he saw it as a spiritual practice, a way to refine one's mind and body in preparation for the challenges of big wall climbing. Chongo's influence reached beyond Yosemite as slacklining became a global phenomenon. Climbers found that walking the line improved their mental discipline, focus, and control over fear, a crucial skill for high-altitude ascents and solo climbing. He was one of the first to set up long high lines. Slack lines stretch over massive drops, further pushing the boundaries of the sport and inspiring generations of climbers and balance athletes. But his mentorship extended beyond slacklining. He was a master of efficiency and safety in big wall climbing. His innovative hauling techniques, anchor systems, and bivy strategies changed the way climbers approached multi-day ascents. His teachings were especially valuable to those attempting Yosemite's massive walls, such as El Capitan and Half Dome. Climbing legends like Dean Potter, Tommy Caldwell, and countless others learned from Chongo. He taught them not just climbing techniques, but the philosophy behind it. To him, climbing wasn't just a sport, it was a way of life, a meditative practice that demanded patience, humility, and a deep respect for nature. Many climbers who spent time with him walked away not only with better climbing skills, but with a transformed perspective on life, risk, and personal freedom. Beyond climbing, Chongo was a storyteller. His ability to captivate an audience with tales of adventure, wisdom, and humor made him a beloved figure in the Yosemite climbing community. Campfire gatherings often became impromptu philosophy sessions where climbers from all over the world sat and listened to his musings on life, the universe, and the art of climbing. Chongo wasn't just a climber, he is a writer and a thinker who documented his unique views on life, climbing, and freedom. His writings mixed humor, philosophy, and practical knowledge, offering a glimpse into his unconventional mindset. Some of Chongo's most famous works are The Complete Book of Big Wall Climbing. This was Chongo's most well-known book, a detailed guide on big wall climbing. It covered gear, rope systems, anchor placement, and survival strategies for multi-day climbs. He combined technical advice with philosophy, making the book both practical and inspiring. The book also featured hand-drawn illustrations, simplifying complex techniques for climbers of all levels. The Homeless Interpretation of Quantum Mechanics. A mix of physics and philosophy, this book explored how life, like quantum mechanics, is full of possibilities until choices define a path. He connected these ideas to climbing, where every move shapes the journey. Though not a scientific book, it reflected his curiosity and unique perspective, making it thought-provoking for climbers and thinkers alike. Chongo also wrote numerous essays and letters about society, freedom, and climbing. His works were passed around the climbing community, offering insights into his way of life. His writings often had humor, poetry, and countercultural wisdom, making them popular among those seeking a different way of life. His books and essays weren't just about climbing, they were about living freely and thinking deeply. He believed climbing was more than a sport, it was a way to escape society's constraints and understand oneself. Though he never made much money from his books, his ideas continue influencing climbers and free spirits worldwide. His words remain a testament to a life lived with purpose and freedom. After 2 decades of evading rangers, the authorities finally caught up with Chongo. In 2005, he was arrested and taken to court. Yosemite officials charged him with illegal camping, arguing that his long-term presence in the park violated federal laws meant to protect public lands. Despite his defense and the support of the climbing community, the ruling was clear. He was permanently banned from Yosemite. It was part of a larger effort by the National Park Service to crack down on long-term squatters in Yosemite. For years, authorities had been trying to remove those who lived in the park without permits, believing their presence harmed the environment and violated park regulations. Many climbers saw his eviction as a symbolic moment, signaling the end of Yosemite's golden age of free-spirited climbing culture. The days when climbers could camp indefinitely in Camp 4 or hide in the wilderness were fading, replaced by stricter regulations and increased enforcement. For Chongo, leaving Yosemite was more than just losing a home. It was losing his entire way of life. He had built his world around the granite walls of El Capitan and Half Dome, and now he was forced to walk away. Though devastated, he remained defiant. In interviews, he criticized the system that prioritized rules over human experience. He argued that he had lived in harmony with nature, never causing harm, and that his eviction was proof that modern society valued control more than freedom. His departure sparked outrage from climbers who saw him as a legend and a mentor. Many believed that Yosemite had lost something special when it pushed out one of its most unique residents. After his eviction, Chongo's life changed drastically. He could no longer live in Yosemite, but he never abandoned his way of life. Without a steady home, he moves between places, spending time in various climbing communities, staying with friends, and continuing to share his knowledge and philosophy. Despite not having a permanent residence, he remains devoted to his ideas of freedom and simplicity. Though he is no longer in Yosemite, his influence has never faded. Climbers still tell stories about him, passing down his wisdom to a new generation. His books continue to inspire those who seek the life beyond the constraints of modern society, encouraging people to question norms and find their own paths. Even outside of Yosemite, he continues writing and reflecting on his experiences. He occasionally appears at climbing festivals and gatherings where young climbers listen to his tales of the golden era of Yosemite climbing. His presence reminds many that the spirit of dirtbag climbing, living for passion rather than material gain, is still alive. While his days in the valley might be behind him, his legacy remains. Chongo Chuck may no longer sleep beneath El Capitan, but his story lives on in the heart of every climber who dares to live life on their own terms. Today, Chongo is still alive. According to climbers who have encountered him recently, he is living his life happily. A Mountain Project user in 2020 commented, "He works at a Walmart in Bakersfield and is very happy. Though he may not live in the wilderness anymore, his spirit remains unchanged." Chongo is more than a person. He is a symbol of freedom. His life challenges everything we think and know about success, happiness, and survival. He lived with nothing, but he had everything. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Chongo Chuck, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories about the biggest names and moments in outdoor recreation.